Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Michael Jackson. I'll be acting as your host for this second Tissue World Digital Day. And I welcome you from wherever in the world you're watching and taking part in this, our third webinar during Tissue World's Digital Days. It's following on from yesterday's two very impressive live sessions, one focusing on Asia and the other in the afternoon European time was on an engaging Yankee workshop. A little bit of introduction to Tissue World, as I'm sure we're all familiar with it, but let me remind you it's been here since 1993 as a unique platform globally where people in the industry meet, learn, and do business. And this, the first ever digital version of Tissue World, is certainly doing that for you as well. It's all about really embracing transformation and discussion around how tissue can thrive in turbulent times. Designed to bring you as close as possible to a live tissue world as we once knew it in these new and difficult times, as the pandemic has caused us and a lot of other people to cancel all live events for this year. But as a heads up, if you're joining us today for the first time, overall, we're approaching 1,000 delegates now registered for these digital days and across the conference. They're attending like yourselves from all over the world, with well over 40 countries at the last count represented from across North America, the UK, Europe, Africa, India, South America, the Middle East, and Australia. And of course, they represent the creme de la creme of the industry, from across the C-suite through to executives and directors, engineers, researchers, and even technicians who represent truly the entire industry. We have suppliers to the industry with us as well, integrated tissue products makers, converters, jumbo roll makers, machine makers, and some retail and distribution people to round out that illustrious gathering. I'd like to thank our sponsors, and they've helped us bring this platform to you. We'll talk about them a little later, but our gold sponsor, Expectancy, and our silver sponsor, ICM. As our gold sponsor, so let me tell you a little about Expectancy, or ECP, which is the manufacturing, marketing, and sales company for many of Turkey's leading brands in the tissue paper, baby care, personal care, household care, and other away-from-home categories. Established way back in 1969, it now has over 50 years of tissue-making experience and produces high-standard products as well as parent reels. It's got a proud record of flexibility and its solutions-orientated approaches, which it's built across long-standing partnerships with customers across now 5 continents and well over 80 countries. Cellpack, of course, is their best known and most preferred brand in its segment across the planet. So clearly, as you probably gathered, this session right now is all about Turkey as your gateway to key markets, as we look at the outlook across this dynamic, fast developing and important region. So we're live right now. It's just after 2 o'clock in Central Europe, just after 1 in the UK. It's 4 o'clock in Istanbul. And I'm sure, like me, you're ready to go for it. We're going to have a Q&A with the speakers today as well. It'll be enabled for the session on your platform, which you'll be able to see on your screen. And our expert moderator and keynote speaker, Jonathan Roberts, I'll introduce him shortly, is going to be driving that Q&A. Feel free to get engaged and ask as many questions as you'd like in our special session after our speakers have finished up today. In a moment, Jonathan's keynote presentation, followed by 3 key industry leaders from Turkey, all taking part in a panel discussion. The Lila Group, Hayat Kimya, and Expectancy fully represented. So let me introduce Jonathan to you. Although you probably know him already, he's a well-known figure in the industry as a paper and fiber communications consultant from Prior Roberts Communications in the UK. He's also a regular moderator at Tissue World events. He founded Prior Roberts Communications back in 1999, having worked as a journalist originally for PPI in Brussels, and he did that for several years. Today, though, with Prior Roberts, his client base extends right across Europe. Jonathan, it's a real pleasure to have you with us, sir. We're looking forward to your keynote. Let me hand over the baton to you.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. It's nice to see you again at the Tissue World event, albeit not in person. But so I'd just like to say hello to our audience in Turkey and indeed around the world. Now, as someone involved in Tissue World events, as Michael alluded to, for nearly 20 years in various ways, it's an honor to be addressing you wherever you are, particularly in the company of our panel guests today, all of whom have been so instrumental in making Turkey the great tissue-making nation that it is today. All of you who have registered today will be sent a link to the full text of this presentation in the next day or so. Now, let's first look at where we are now in terms of something which has, of course, affected us all, the pandemic. Now, at this point, it does seem that Turkey has coped somewhat better with the pandemic than most countries in terms of active cases per million of the population. And I know that, like with many nations, it's actually getting worse at the moment. But with a plausible vaccine on the horizon, perhaps we can even dare to plan for the future. And as Michael and I were discussing this morning, apparently shares in Zoom have dipped slightly. So maybe that's an indication of where we think things are going. So first of all, onto my second slide, please. Now, back in March in Turkey, there was a spike in demand for tissue, as in many countries, and there was more at-home consumption, as you would expect. But of course, it all balances out in the end, because there are only so many humans, and only changes in habits will increase consumption in the long term. But on that note, on the note of habits, the pandemic has caused increased use of paper towels, for example, to replace cloths. And that's according to Bilge Çifke, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Eczacıbaşı Consumer Products, who was interviewed in Tissue World by Senior Editor Helen Morris. I would actually recommend the latest issue of Tissue World magazine, if you haven't already seen it. I know this is blatant marketing here, but this particular issue, just get it so you can all see it. Anyway, you get the idea. There are a great many very interesting articles about Turkey in that particular issue. So if you haven't already seen it, then I would commend that to you. Next slide, please. Now, also on the subject of consumer behaviour, a global phenomenon has been an increased awareness of hygiene. Global tissue consumption is likely to rise by 10 to 15% post-pandemic because of hygienic understanding having changed. That's according to Lila Group Chairman Orhan Uca in an interview he gave to Tissue World. Now, for a great tissue-making nation like Turkey, this is, of course, a great opportunity. And even in the worst of situations, we need to make the most of opportunities because they mean jobs and economic recovery. But with its strong exports, tissue makes an important contribution not only to Turkey's income, but also to its current account deficit, or to reducing that, of course. Now, out of interest, Turkey's two top export destinations for all products, not just tissue, they've been unchanged in the past decade, and those are Germany and the United Kingdom at just under 10% and just over 6%, respectively. And Italy also remains near the top. Those figures are according to The Economist. Next slide, please. And here is the situation specifically for tissue exports, courtesy of Fisher International. And where you can see that the UK stands out as a very strong market for Turkish tissue. A lot of those will be jumbo rolls, of course. Another effect of the pandemic, which has also been a global effect, is the accelerated uptake of e-commerce. Now, e-commerce enables price comparison, variety of choice, flexibility of where and when you do your shopping, free delivery, and of course, the opportunity for bulk purchases. And this is another aspect of the pandemic. Bigger packs have certainly been normalized in many different situations. But at this point, I'd also say that how tissue travels those last few kilometers of its journey to the consumer, that's a live debate. Digital strategies are vital, and the pandemic has only accelerated a change which was already in progress. Next slide, please. Now, Turkey starts from a rising but still relatively low use of tissue per capita. Figures vary, but what you can see in this slide from Euromonitor is a good indication for at-home consumption. But in this new era of hygiene, there is an opportunity for global growth and Turkish growth, of course. Bear in mind that Turkey is one of the biggest economies in the world. It's in the top 5%. That might not be on the basis of income per head yet, but obviously it's at a very high level. The population continues to expand. Next slide, please. The population in 2011 was just short of 76 million. Today, it's over 80 million. Unemployment does continue to grow, which is of course going to be a global problem. But Turkey has the many positive aspects of an advanced and promising economy. There is a low gender pay gap. It's one of the highest percentages in the world of the population involved in higher or tertiary education, university education, you might want to call it. It's a very highly educated country with a relatively low cost of living. It's also among the world's top 10 tourist destinations for obvious reasons. Life expectancy has risen quite dramatically. We were looking 10 years ago at about 70, 75 for men and women. Now it's around 74 and 80. In the USA, by comparison, during that time, it's barely changed. And adult literacy has gone from nearly 90%. It was already high 10 years ago, and now it's almost complete. Turkey is also a more service-orientated economy than it was 10 years ago. Today, just under 55% of the labour force are in the service economy, compared with 48% in 2011. This is related to the urbanization trends. The urban population has risen from just under 70% to just over 74% in the last 10 years. And that's a positive sign for tissue. It always is. There are more households than there were, up from just under 18 million to over 23 million. And unsurprisingly, there are fewer in each household, but this can drive certain types of tissue product. Kitchen towel, for example, the more households, the more sales of tissue, of kitchen towel. Right, next slide, please. What is clear is that among the large proportion of people who are tissue users in Turkey, tissue is no longer a luxury. Perhaps during hard times, toilet paper becomes multifunctional, but it's still a clear requirement. It's not a luxury for its users. Looking ahead, Euromonitor believes that there's an unmet potential of 400,000 tons per year in retail sales in Turkey. That's nearly $1 billion. You can see the breakdown of overall consumption in this slide from Fisher International. In away from home, which will of course grow as the economy recovers, hygiene and sanitation are increasingly the top priority. I'm thinking obviously particularly of hotels and restaurants, and this obviously favours tissue. Next slide, please. Now, if we look at external factors, the price of pulp is the main one. The price is way down from its peak in 2019, but the Turkish lira is weak compared with the US dollar in which pulp is priced. So to put it in perspective, and I know it's extreme at the moment, but $1 in 2009 would have bought nearly 1.5 Turkish lira, and today it will buy around 8. Now, our audience today is international, but our Turkish audience will be well aware of this situation. And the country imports lots of its virgin fibre, probably most of its virgin fibre, and so that does limit its ability to control costs. The country also does use a lot of recycled fibre, de-inked and otherwise, but this must be vulnerable, I would say, bearing in mind the diminishing use of printing and writing grades, and they are, of course, the source of recycled fibre. So that's going to be an ongoing discussion. Of course, the weak lira is good for exports, and tissue travels further than it used to. It's notable now how much tissue from Turkey is exported to the USA, whereas very little was exported there even 5 or 6 years ago. Of course, USA per capita consumption is at least 4 times as much as in Turkey. The Americans have a very big appetite for tissue compared with any country in the world, but Turkey is there to help meet it. So Turkey's exports of tissue continue to increase and its imports reduce. And it's a trend which has been seen throughout the last decade. And of course, Turkey is expanding outside its own borders, with Hayat Kimya destined to be Russia's largest tissue producer, as we saw in Tissue World magazine's interview with one of our panelists today, Lutfi Aydin. And then the Lila Group, represented today on our panel by CEO Alp Ayuca, exports to 80 countries in 5 continents, according to an interview in Tissue World. And they're aiming to export to many more countries. Turkey has indeed proved itself to be a gateway to many markets and amongst neighbours and those further afield. Turkey's biggest source of imports remains Germany. Imports are very much focused on consumer tissue. Next slide, please. Now, looking at Turkey's production capability, the last decade has seen the startup of significant new capacity. So these are relatively new, fast, efficient machines, and that's good for competitiveness. And you can see the number of new lines in this slide from Fisher International. In terms of speed and average technical age, Turkey's machines are comfortably ahead of the United Kingdom, for example. That's according to Fisher International, as quoted in Tissue World. And as I said, these efficiencies are very important, bearing in mind the lack of control over the cost of fibre and the increasing pressure on margins. Now, the figure I mentioned from Euromonitor about that unmet potential of 400,000 tonnes per year in retail sales, well, that's the equivalent of around 8 tissue machines, 8 fairly large tissue machines. Of course, it depends what Turkey's neighbouring countries do in terms of investment as well, as to who takes up that capacity. And the risk of excess capacity is always present during an expansion phase. And another risk as capacity grows, particularly with advanced technology, is a potential skills gap. I'll ask that to our panelists later. Now, looking at the structure of demand, of course, tough times favour private label. 41% of consumer market in Turkey was private label, according to Euromonitor in 2019. Although there has been a squeeze in the price difference between private label and the brands, and the pandemic is only going to make people more price sensitive. Perhaps it will be 2022 before there's any sort of sense of normality. But I think it's clear that as the market grows, which it is fully expected to, successful companies will be those which are nimble and flexible with product formats and with their routes to market. Quality, innovation in technology, product and strategy are going to be the key. So final slide, please. I'd just like to thank you all very much for your attention. Before we move to the panel discussion, we'd like to thank our gold sponsor, which is Eczacıbaşı, for sponsoring this session. And we now, before we have this short video, I'd just like to explain that unfortunately the sound isn't working, but there are subtitles, so I'm sure you'll get almost the whole experience. So we'd have the video now, please. Okay, so thank you very much. And now I'm very excited to move on to the panel section of this webinar. And I'm delighted to announce our 3 participants today who are probably all known to you. Certainly the companies they work for are very well known. So I'd like to introduce first Alp Ayuca, who is the CEO of Lila Group in Turkey. Lutfi Aydin, who is the Global Tissue Production Director at Hayat Kimya. And last but not least, Ahmet Segmen, who is the Chief Sales Officer of Eczacıbaşı Consumer Products. So welcome to all 3 of you. And just like to tell our audience that those biographies of all 3 gentlemen are available on the schedule section of the site. So you can have a good look at their experience and qualifications. So I'd like to begin with the first question. I'm going to start with you, Alp, if that's okay. it's quite a general question, but what would you say are the positive lessons learned from the pandemic?
Well, in tissue industry, where we are working with hygiene, it's definitely on the positive side that not only us, but the whole consumer world has learned that hygiene is at utmost important. And that is a positive lesson for everyone, and I believe a contribution to our industry in general. Other than that, I believe that local production is quite important when it comes to big markets. But in addition to that, continuous access to logistics and supply chain is also a very important aspect. We have learned in this period that having a continuous access without any limitations and with higher automation to such logistics and supply chain is crucial to run industries. And another aspect that we have learned is digitalization. I've listened to many numbers of webinars and thoughts about digitalization, but I guess all of us would agree that the speed of digitalization has never been this much in the past, during what we have experienced in the past 6 months. All the IT guys are, I believe, happy about it, that their work has actually proved a lot of efficiency during this time. I believe the last thing is a more soft skill. We have learned to appreciate the dedicated workforce that we have during this time. And also a lot of us, I believe, have learned the appreciation for simple stuff during our everyday life, to be at home with the loved ones. But also coming back to the business side of it, we have learned to appreciate the small things that we do for each other in our ecosystem, with our suppliers, with our logistics suppliers, the customers, and everyone.
Well, it's very nice to bring up the human aspect of this, because of course how we're affected is very much on a human level, and how we come out of this is very much on a human level. But Ahmet, I'd also like to ask you sort of general question on the same general question about the positive lessons of the pandemic. How's that been from your perspective?
Well, I totally agree with what Mr. Oyucu said, but just to add on some extra points. First of all, as part of the consumer products industry, I think we all have experienced the safety net of being in the industry which is serving the basic needs of the consumers. Because our Eczacıbaşı Corporation operates in various industries, from building products to natural resources to healthcare, and all of these industries have a different level of reaction to crisis, economic or health case reactions like this one that we are experiencing. If at times of boom or at times of economic shrinkage, they might have disproportionate reactions to the economic waves. However, luckily, consumer products, because it is serving the basic needs of the consumers, always have smaller jumps during days of economic boost and smaller dives during days of economic crisis. So this is something good, and we experienced it in a sense that many industries have suffered because of the pandemic, but we not all the consumer products industry have enjoyed, but at least they were not really hurt from the pandemic disproportionately. Looking at tissue in detail, as Mr. Oyucu said, we were actually positively discriminated from the rest because of the hygiene awareness increase among the consumers, mainly in paper towels, as Bilge shared in Tissue World magazine in her interview. The paper towel category is a category where all of the brand owners, all of the manufacturers have been trying to increase penetration for years. And thanks to this tailwind coming from the pandemic and the awareness of hygiene, the penetration of paper towels have increased by 4.5 percentage points since the beginning of the pandemic. So yes, we were positively discriminated from the other industries, luckily. But still, even though if we hadn't been positively discriminated, we believe that consumer products industry is an industry which is a safe bet. It doesn't have huge jumps during boosts, but it doesn't have huge dives during times of crisis. So it's a good place to be.
No, absolutely. That's been the message all around. I mean, it hasn't been easy for anyone, but obviously tissue has been relatively resilient. I'd say very resilient, and many of its qualities have been recognized. Just a quick word to our audience. Do feel free to use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen to engage with our speakers. We'll have a Q&A opportunity after this short discussion when I'll be able to pose as many of your questions as possible to our panelists today. Mr. Aydin, I'd like to move on. Obviously, yours is particularly a technological role. And could you tell us a little bit how technology has played a part in keeping production going despite the social distancing measures which have been necessary? That must have been quite a challenge. Can you tell me a bit about that? I think you just need to unmute your... There you are.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I would like to tell a little bit about how can we survey production during that pandemic in our mills. You know, in unexpected and life-threatening situations such as a pandemic, people primarily act in the direction of meeting their physiological needs. So we acted exactly according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All of us are suddenly back to pyramid first stage, you know. All of the people are. Everyone around the shopping centers, this situation created sudden and big demand explosion. Yeah. As a result, we had encountered with the big sales pressure, especially in the consumer product. To cover the demand increasing of finished goods, we increased our productivity over the normal level. I mean, over the regular overall equipment efficiency value. Of course, while doing this, the priority was given to our operators' health. In this aspect, we trained our operators in order to protect themselves from COVID-19. Located hand sanitizers to each part of the plants. Redesign the seat arrangement in canteen, in factory shuttle bus, also in common areas. Measured the every person fever in our plant regularly using the thermal cameras. Changed the food serving in canteen. Now the food is serving in packaged form. The order of blue-collar shift plan was changed from 3 shifts to 2 shifts. In case of any infection, 1 shift was kept in reserve constantly at their homes. White-collar workers started working in smart mode, and many other precautions not listed here have been taken in order to control the COVID-19 in our plants. Additionally, we started using tablets to keep our shift logs in digital platform. Thanks to digital platform, it enables us to follow shift performance closely even when we are in smart mode and share the every records easily among the departments. On the other hand, the web meetings have become very common, such as Zoom, WebEx, or any smart platforms. I think for the white-collar employees, the meeting rooms will unnecessary places in the near future. Yeah, that kind of application in our mills, we are trying to surveying our production as much as possible.
Right. I think what we sort of, how we can develop from that aspect. Now, obviously, what you've been describing, Mr. Aydin, about how you have coped in the sort of production scenario is very interesting and being replicated across a lot of different industries. But when we're talking about expansion as well, which might well come in the tissue industry, how about the skills gap? How do you feel about your ability to recruit and retain the right people to run these high tech machines? Sorry, Mr. Aydin, if you could come in on that one.
I try to now, we are 16 years in the tissue production industry. We have a very nice experience, the employer. We are getting new employers. We are teaching them in our mill. Then we are using that kind of the people to do the new investment area. Yeah, we are very familiar for that kind of the expanding on the actually in the other of the Turkey, the countries.
Mr. Uca, could I bring you in on this one? Obviously, you will be looking at expanding and building capacity. I know that's very important for the Lila Group. What is your sort of take on the skills gap or the potential skills gap?
Yes, we are growing as well. One of the bars in your previous slides belongs to us. Actually, quite a few of them, and the others belong to the other panelists here, most of them. So yes, we are growing, and I believe that this skills gap is one of the most important issues in our country at this time, because continuous growth in production maybe requires less people in sales or marketing departments in that aspect, but definitely requires more people even in the logistics in the plant. So how do we train? We try to start quite a long time before the investment starts, and hire mostly the key skilled personnel, the key people, and then work with them during the project times. That's one of the good ways, I believe, to have people get trained. And the other thing is, as we have also spent more than 12 years now in the industry, we are more ready for providing education, let's say training through our own resources and also through our suppliers. Working with the suppliers also is a key point in that. But the final thing is that this is a dynamic process that continues, all the time. So it never ends. And looking in the near future, I believe all of us here in Turkey are gonna need more skilled people and to do more training because more capacity is coming. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we cannot, actually I have one more thing to add. The one thing that we cannot train people for, I believe, we can't, but less is adaptability. Nobody expected anything like this, a pandemic. well, we get people trained for technical skills, we get people trained for communication, for digital skills, for all, but adaptability was one thing that we don't train people for. And it looks like this pandemic shows us that we also need to think about this issue, because different risks come at unexpected times. So, and for that, I believe the best way to train people is to set a good example and increase communication during this time.
Okay, that's a very interesting point that you talk, about adaptability there. And also you mentioned the word risk, and preparing your workforce is one aspect of risk management. But Mr. Eucu, if I could just stay with you for a moment, broadening this out into risk management in general, how has the situation over the last year, in what ways have you adapted your risk management strategy in order to, you can't predict something like a pandemic, of course, but how has it adjusted your strategy in terms of risk management?
I believe all of us have thought about our supply chain of all kinds of raw materials, keeping stocks or increasing stocks or inventory, or increasing the number of suppliers. This was one of the key issues of risk management during this time. Well, another thing is, as Mr. Lutfi stated, having key personnel in various shifts and trying to spare some people in the case of an infection is another issue. There are financial risks always at these times, because well, you don't expect a pandemic to cause that, but having let's say a volatile economy in Turkey has also taught us to take more precautions against such times. And I believe these were all, but I don't want to restate the precautions we have taken for our people, for our personnel, but that became a must in Turkey to continue the production in 24/7.
Mr. Aydin, just continuing on that, but more on a specifically technical front, how important has the support of suppliers with sort of remote assistance and that sort of thing, how important has that been in the pandemic? So that's it. Sorry, could I just, yeah, perfect, thank you.
Sorry. I will give again the production, the site about our risk management, how we manage the risk in the production side. As mentioned before, we took very efficiency precaution to avoid the infection of COVID-19 in our plants, to continue taking the additional precaution. In this regard, we created an internal committee named Committee for Extraordinary Situation, structured by the representative of all the related departments on the plants. With the director of the committee, we achieved to keep COVID-19 under control. The committee is holding the daily meetings and taking the decisions. As per our experience during this period, the main pillars to overcome the unexpected situation are: take the right decision quickly, implement the decision soon, control the every step very close, the transparent to everyone. On the other hand, to avoid any unforeseen future risk, we started doing the exercise so often against the possible disaster such as a fire, earthquake, etc. Yeah, about the supply, the raw material supply during that time, yeah, we increased our needs, we increased our stocks, raw material. and we shorter the delivery time. We survive with this kind of take the logistic side during that pandemic time.
Thank you very much. Right, at this point, let's move outside the factory, outside the manufacturing scenario. Mr. Segmen, I'd like to bring you in here and look at consumer behaviour. How have you seen that evolving? What particular market trends have evolved in the last few months that you've noticed from your perspective?
Well, it was unexpected for sure. So no one would expect such a thing. That's why, because it's a crisis, but this was not a typical crisis as well. So this was really a new thing for everyone. So no one could be ready for such a thing, actually. However, we figured out that there are some things which we have done previously, which helped us to be ready. This was not the main. So for us to be acting that way was not our main objective, but it ended up helping us to overcome these challenges in a better way. What am I talking about? First of all, there were huge short-term profitable tactical opportunities for everyone. The demand spike was so high. There was a huge demand from all over the world, and you could have lots of profits. However, what we have done is we stick to our commitments, we stick to our sustainable business relations, and we held hands together with our business partners, be it the suppliers, be it the customers, all stakeholders, and we ended up overcoming the challenges and the new unexpected trends altogether. This is good because now we have stronger relations than before. So we know that we can trust each other, both the suppliers and the customers, because we are the suppliers of our customers at the end of the day. Talking about going back to the new trends, first of all, the necessities have won over the desires. So everyone has focused on their needs, their necessities, and postponed or deprioritized their desires, wants, or likes. This is a very important new trend. Secondly, the awareness for hygiene has increased incredibly. Third, the digitalization, especially in shopping. So the boom in e-commerce is worth sharing. In addition to that, proximity, because people do not want to travel further away and people do not want to meet with many people. So proximity stores have increased. Purposeful and sustainability. Shoppers are more in search for purposeful companies, brands, and more sustainability focused brands and companies. This has increased because consumers, respect for the world, respect for the environment has increased. So they are more into sustainability, and I think it will continue to increase. Having said this, and I'm sure you all can add like 10 or 15 more new trends, consumer trends, shopper trends, industry trends, retailing trends. However, the biggest important thing is some of these trends will go away after the pandemic ends, and some of them will stay. And the caveat there is to be able to figure out which trends will stay and which trends will go. I think that's a challenge for all the industries now and for our industry as well.
Okay. Mr. Ojo, if I could bring you in on this point, two things to tackle here. First of all, which trends you think might stay and which might go away, but also the sustainability aspect. That was there before, it's been very important, it remains very important. So, first of all, look at those trends which you think will come and go away, and then maybe take us into your views about sustainability and how important that is to consumers.
Well, in order not to repeat, let me just say one of the most important ones. I believe e-trade is going to be a key point. It's very, very important today. It's going to be more important tomorrow. The consumer asks for more delivery to the door or in some easy way for, let's say, constant for products that are packaged products, let's say, in general. And this is a trend that we see, an increase that we see, and it looks like it's going to be kept that way. Another trend from our perspective is the importance of hygiene, the increase of kitchen towels, the usage in many countries that we see today. It looks like this is it's going to stick, and we expect it to stay that way for the near future. Spending more time at home with family and friends could be a continuous trend, well, at least compared to the past, which could mean that the increase of tonnage in tissue and away from home could come only from the the places, the hospitals, the airports, and all that. But more spending time at home probably is gonna have an effect, and we hope and we expect, I guess, all of us here, that this trend, spending more time at home and more consumer tissue at home, it stays that way. For the other question, can you repeat the next one?
Yes, it was about sustainability. Obviously, that was important before the pandemic, but yeah. Is that how high would you say that is in consumers' minds?
Well, sustainability is a key issue for all of us here, and it's very important for our company as well. In many ways that we demonstrate this in our brands and the certifications that we get, and all of us try to serve our customers that way. But I believe that at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the aspects of sustainability was less cared in, especially in our country, where we were trying to use less plastics, and it turned out to be more plastics in every way, in away from home, and packaged food, in the facial masks that we use and everything. But now that this is that we learn to live with it, I believe we are back to the same sustainability issue in every aspect. So sustainability and producing environmentally friendly is an issue, not only for the best benefit of the consumer in an economical way, but also in the producer's economical, let's say, sustainability as well. Spending less energy, using less water every day to produce tissue is very important for us as well. And that's what we are doing to invest to keep it that way.
Okay, yes, thanks very much. I'd like to bring Mr. Segmen in here because sustainability is such an important issue. Also, we've got a lot of questions coming in, and it's nice to see the audience is so engaged. And one person was asking specifically about plastics, which you just mentioned there, and Mr. Ilja. Mr. Segmen, could you tell us a little bit about plastics? It's a big issue for society, and I know that in tissue converting, it's something that the technology manufacturers are looking at quite closely. obviously you're not here with a technical hat on, but you know about your consumers. How do you think consumers perceive plastic?
Well, consumers are becoming more and more sensitive about environmental sustainability. That's for sure. And this sensitivity has increased, especially with the pandemic. But as Mr. Öcü said, even though the sensitivity has increased, the use of plastic has also increased in many ways because of hygiene reasons. So first of all, we have to go back to where we were before. And then do sustainability efforts from that base. That's a fact for sure. Not only for tissue industry, but for all the industries that operate in the world. But for our sustainability efforts, we are very much aware of the increasing sustainability demands from the consumers, especially the young generation. As we see with Greta Thunberg, the young generation is very much worried of their own future. So we are very much focused on that. What are we trying to do? We are working on plans to reduce our plastic waste, reduce our carbon footprints, and the biggest thing we are trying to do is to get our cellulose from sustainable forests, from industrial sustainable forests. Those are the things that we are currently doing, but we should be doing more. We are aware of that. And the consumers will be demanding for more. That is also something we are very sure about. One thing to add about sustainability, sustainability is not only environmental sustainability. Sustainability is something you do in everything you do. And we as Eczacıbaşı see our people, our organization, our customers, our suppliers, our consumers, and the environment as a big ecosystem. And this ecosystem creates value for each other. So for us to be able to call ourselves as successful in terms of sustainability, we believe that we should be able to pass the test for each component in this ecosystem. So then we will be able to say that we are doing successful stuff in sustainability. So this is how we see it actually.
Okay, Mr. Aydın, I'll bring you in here. Obviously, I'd like you to have the opportunity to tell us a little bit about Hayat Kimya's sustainability. Obviously, without repeating what the others have said, looking at plastics, that's obviously quite a big issue at the moment, as both the other panelists have talked about, particularly in converting. As a technologist, have you got a particular view on this, whether plastic in converting is going to diminish, or whether it's just too practical, too hygienic to be got rid of?
Yeah, just 2-3 years ago, when we were in the Lucca for open house, we have seen some converting machine producers. They show us the paper coverage, paper rapid instead of the plastic. Then when we have seen that in the Lucca, we start to work on it in our R&D department. I am sure in the next future, next future is not so far. The plastic will take away from the tissue converting plants. The paper actually is the paper will come to the tissue converting line. We are trying to prepare ourselves to that issue. Another side, also we have already sustainability plan during the last 10 years in our company. In this scope, many projects were realized, such as reduction in water consumption from certain level, reduction on carbon footprint, that's a really good value, is a 32%, because we are using cogeneration application in the Turkey. That is the reason to reduce carbon footprint. Also, we install overall equipment efficiency in our machinery. We measure online overall equipment efficiency. That's the help us to increase our the productivity around 2%. And yeah, actually the converting, thanks to the converting management to the Hayat Kimya, they work to decrease the consumption, the glue consumption, the converting plant. They reached nowadays 12%, is a really good value. They are working, still continue to working on it. Yeah, there are many similar ongoing projects we have. Sustainability is one of the inevitable principles of our company. In the following years, I hope we will speak about the different kind of the things on the sustainability in the Tissue World seminar.
Okay. While I have your attention, Mr. Aydin, we're moving now into the questions coming from our global audience as well. And one of the questions is regarding alternative fibres. Now, obviously, with the price of traditional virgin bleached pulp being a problem, particularly with a relatively weak currency, is that a serious consideration to use different fibres? We can come on to recycled fibres next, but how about alternate fibres?
Yeah, you know, we are buying pulp from the pulp producer. We are using which are in the market nowadays. Actually, the bamboo is a very popular at that time. Bamboo pulp is very popular at that time in the tissue industry. But amount of the bamboo pulp is not so high. Yeah, it's produced just in the China, in the Indonesia, I think some parts. Yeah, there is no alternative fiber than existing in the market. But in the another side, the waste paper also is a decreasing year by year. You know, the technology, digitalization is the decrease the use of the printing and writing. For that reason, white waste fiber, white waste is a decreasing. White waste paper is a decreasing year by year. For that reason, we didn't think until now to install the best paper plant in our production site.
Mr. Aydin, if I could bring you in here, we've been talking about fibres, and obviously that's something which is very much affected by the exchange rate. But the other aspect of the exchange rate, obviously, is that Turkish products become more competitive. Can you tell me a bit about this is from one of our audience members, about which countries would be your main target when you're looking at increasing exports?
I have to first clarify something, that the exchange rate actually does not provide us any let's say materialistic advantage towards in this field, because all of us here, and also anyone in tissue industry, knows that we are importing pulp, and as Mr. Aydin stated, the recycled fiber is almost non-existent in the Turkish market. I mean, it's very, very small. So if all fiber is important, and then additionally all chemicals are important, and then additionally all packaging material is let's say in euro or dollar currency, then there's very little left in our industry or talking about any currency advantage, let's say. So if Turkey had any pulp production and in local currency and was very little affected by any let's say changes in the world, then that would be true, but not in our case. So that's why this issue doesn't have any effect on our target markets. What has an effect is, as everyone knows, that the tax, let's say, rates in those countries that we target are important when it comes to producing in another country and shipping to another country. And then logistics costs, the marketing costs, and if the country has any import and export, let's say, difference, the local production and the amount needed in the consumption level in that country. Other than that, I have to say the competitiveness that we create is by our hard work and then, let's say, the grace for lower margins, I have to say.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to be we've got just a few minutes left, and we're going to have to jump around a bit because obviously the questions coming from the audience are on a variety of subjects. But one of them is logistics, in the sense that obviously e-commerce, which you've referred to. I'd like to ask Mr. Segmen how you see changes in logistics operations, bearing in mind how the sort of route to market might change gradually in the light of what's happened, or it might make certain changes come around more quickly. Sorry, Mr. Segmen, I would need to maybe make that a bit clearer. I was just asking about logistics.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware the question was for me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Sorry, we're looking about the route,
okay.
getting the product to consumers.
Yeah.
How do you see logistics changing in Turkey in that respect?
Well, there's a big problem there, actually. The trend for sure shows that the e-commerce is going to grow even faster, and we'll get a bigger pie from the market. That's a given fact, and there's no one who does not agree with this fact. And all the brand owners are aware that they have to be there, they have to win there if they want to survive. Otherwise, they will be losing market share for sure. However, unfortunately, the logistics cost, especially for paper, does not pay out for us, all of us, all the brand owners, to be able to win in the e-commerce channel, e-commerce businesses. So we should be able to find a solution which enables the consumer to be happy, enables the retailer to be happy, and us to be happy at the end of the day when there's a transaction. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, but we will have to find a solution because it's a need that is very, very visible. And one thing that we should be doing for sure is trying to reverse the trends, because trends are being driven through consumers, and as the consumers are the boss, we should be able to serve them better. So we should be able to find a way to overcome this problem, but frankly, we don't for now.
Mr. Ojo, if I could bring you in here, we've talked about getting the products to consumers, but let's think about the products themselves. One member of our audience is asking about adding value. Can you tell me a little bit about how important it is to be adding value to products, and selling the products as more than just commodities to the market?
This is definitely a hard question, because we as producers here try to serve the market with the highest quality of technology, the level of technology, with highest quality of materials, and we all compete also in getting skilled people. So there's very little left when all of us here are serving both private labels and branded products in the market. How do we try to differentiate? Well, we try to come up with some new products, different in packaging, different in functionality, with some added value of let's say referring to sustainability, environmental aspects, thicker products, more absorbent products, and such. So this is all the differentiation we try to put in. This is a continuous race between brand owners and the private label products, and it's never going to go back. So how we add value? By doing the best we can in the both in the paper making process, the converting process, and then at the end in the marketing. That's what we try to do.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We've got time for one very quick question, also to Mr. Aydin, just looking at added value from a technical point of view. What are you able to do in terms of tissue production itself and quality?
Yeah, it's a really very difficult question, because very difficult to make added value to the tissue product, because everybody are using the same kind of machinery, the same kind of the technology. You know that the pulp are same, chemical is mostly like to each other. Yeah, as Mr. Örcü said, we are trying to make some differentiation in the packaging. We are trying to the differentiation on the paper surface. We are trying to produce more soft, for example, more strong on the kitchen towel, more absorber. Everybody try it, yeah, not just us. As I said, it's very difficult to make a differentiation on the tissue in the tissue industry. The big question from the marketing teams to us. Every time they are required the different kind of the products. As our friend said, it just we can put something on the packaging, something on the surface. That's all.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. This has been such a stimulating discussion, and it's gone so incredibly quickly. I think we could have easily talked for another hour or so, but unfortunately we are out of time. So, thank you to the audience for your participation and for all your questions, and particularly to all our panelists today. I really appreciate all of your time and your expertise on today's topic. I'm now going to hand over to Michael, who's going to wrap up for today. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you. And I really must echo your words. I can't believe how quickly that session has literally flown by. But I guess that's what happens when the quality of the discussion in the industry really gets you engaged like that as well. I'm sure everyone's learned a tremendous amount from today's session. My own personal takeaway favorite is the estimates of another 400,000 tons of potential which exist in the Turkish marketplace. That's got to be good news for 2021. And when you put it in dollar terms, Jonathan, as you did, $1 billion is a cool $1 billion worth of potential indeed. That's got to make everybody sit up and take.
It's probably not going to happen next year, Michael.
Well, in the next couple of years, at the very least, I hope. But a massive thank you on behalf of everyone at Tissue World to all of you who took part, our presenters, and of course you, the delegates. Jono, thank you for being such a superb moderator. Thank you also to our sponsors who've helped us bring this platform to you. Our gold sponsor, Eczacıbaşı, as well as our silver sponsor, ICM. We didn't mention much about ICM earlier. Let me do that quickly for you. It's an innovative converting machinery company based in Turkey with its own design team, and they build machines to customer specifications, providing an unparalleled maintenance and after-sales support through their very highly skilled technicians. If you're thinking of developing your own factory line, and maybe you are now after hearing about that market potential, think ICM, but not just in Turkey, worldwide. I believe we have a very short ICM video. Let's roll that, and then I'll come back to you with the details of our wrap-up. There you have it, innovative converting machinery indeed. So the networking on our platform continues, of course, and that's one of the most significant reasons that Tissue World went digital for you in these times of the pandemic, to help you make sure that you could take advantage of the very best opportunities to meet with, to engage and network with your industry colleagues from all around the world. On behalf of all of us, once again, thank you. We're going to be back with you later as we now bring this webinar to a close. We'll be back with you later on today. We've got a special Latin America focus, and that's where our attention turns at 5 o'clock Central European time, 4 o'clock UK time, and of course, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Sao Paulo. We hope to see you all there. Thank you and good day.